one thing you can do is you can control everything about wherever you're at. You can make it do whatever you like. If you want to stop the sun in the sky, you can do that. For me, the sun was my like how I experienced the being some call God, I call source, because it's a source of all love, a source of everything in the universe. Um, and so I call it source. And so for me, that being took on this like a giant sun. It was bigger than it appears in the sky. Rays are going all, you can see the individual rays going in all directions, touching everything, everywhere. Um, and it was like whatever it touched was full of love. And I mean, from the smallest flower to the biggest galaxy.
You're listening to Inspire Me with Jay, where science meets spirit and stories of meditation and the near death experience awaken what's possible within us all. I'm Jay, and this is your moment to be inspired. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers. I have Andrew today who had a couple of near-death experiences that transformed his life, and he's here to talk about it. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Jay. Thanks to have to be on your show.
So, yeah, it's great to have you too. So, why don't you tell the audience about your near-death experiences and just tell it in a way that makes the most sense for you and for the audience potentially?
Okay. So I had both of my near-death experiences when I was younger. The first one was at age 7, second at age 14. First one was due to a severe virus that affected a bunch of kids under the age of 16 in my old hometown in Western Massachusetts and the surrounding area. And the second one was from a bullying injury at a camp I happened to be at the time. And so totally between the two of them, I experienced I was only dead for a total of maybe 14 minutes on this side. But what I experienced on the other side, because of the huge difference in how time works on that side, I experienced the equivalent of a year the first time and a decade the second time in 6.5 and 7.5 minutes, respectively. So, uh, I mean, just to say that what I saw and what I experienced was incredible and amazing, and it took me a long time to process it because I grew up in an era in this like in 70s and 80s when the internet didn't exist and there were no resources like there are today. There's no Facebook to compare notes with other people. Um, I never, in fact, I did not meet another person who'd had a near-death experience until the mid 90s because I actually spent like 22 years from 1994 to 2016 traveling around the eastern United States talking about my experiences to small groups or at panel discussions, things like that. And it was at one of those panel discussions, and when people came in after the event to ask questions on an individual basis, it's when I first ran into another NDEer like myself and realized that I was not alone. Because I thought, like my grandmother, when I came back, my grandmother was the only person who believed what I was saying. My family didn't believe me. My friends, people at the church I was going to, school, like my friends, the teachers, nobody believed anything about what I was saying. Because it wasn't something people talked about. It wasn't well known at that particular point. The people who were researching NDEs did it more on the down low at that point in time. It was not an accepted scientific venture. So people who had near death experiences back in the era before the internet did so mostly alone. And that's why I'm so glad we have the internet now, that people have the access to information and to other people, because it's helped so many to avoid having the kind of experiences that I had growing up with it. But anyway, first one I had, like I said, at age 7, and it as more of a it was more of an introductory experience for me because obviously at 7 I had no concept of death at that point in my life. The first person who I saw die was a friend of mine when I was 12 who got killed by a drunk driver in front of me. And the first person in my family who died was my grandfather when the year I graduated from high school, which was 1990. So I, like I didn't have the experience that a lot of people have with near-death experiences with the long white tunnel and seeing dead relatives, things like that, because I didn't have any relatives that I knew who had passed away before I had these experiences. So mine were slightly different. Uh, but like I said, the first one was caused by a virus. The virus that I had, it shut down organs if you got like for the more severe cases, which I was one of them. I was in a coma for over 3 weeks, and it was about the middle of that period is when um, my the last few organs that I had still working, which were my brain, my heart, my lungs, basically shut down one right after the other, all within an hour of each other. And they called a code blue, and immediately I went from a place of darkness where because like a coma, I don't know if anybody who's ever experienced a coma can remember what it was like. For me, it was just pitch black nothingness. I had I was just floating in darkness and had no concept of pain, no concept of any world around me. It was just the inside of my mind, and that was it. And so all of a sudden, I went from that to being outside my body, looking down at something that I had no concept of. Like I did not realize at first that I was looking at myself on the bed in the hospital. They had me in an oxygen tent at the time because of the virus, and I didn't know it was me. It was like I said, I'd never experienced death, and it wasn't until one of the doctors that surrounded me for the code blue said, "Come on back to us, Andy. Come on back to us." That I realized he was talking to me, and he wasn't looking at me where I was at that time. Where I was in the back corner of the room. If you know what a hospital room looks like, they have used to have a TV up on the wall, and I was basically, if I looked to my left, I could have looked right at the TV. So I was up in the corner, and here's the body in the bed, 12 feet away or so. And um, so I was like, well, how am I on the bed and up here at the same time? And and I got really panicky, really confused. Screaming like, what's going on? Somebody help me. And it was right about the time I got the most panicked. I heard a voice, which I realized later was telepathic in my head that belonged to what turned out to be my guide. And he basically told me, "You're fine. You can't be harmed where you are now, and you're experiencing a crossing over. Um, you're in death at the moment, but you can't be harmed. You're not. No one can hurt you here, and you'll be okay." And his voice was so calming to me that I almost immediately relaxed and kind of started to look around and realize, where I was and some kind of try to figure out what was going on. And after after a minute, the voice in my head said, there's things you need to see, and so you need to come with us. And I couldn't see my guide at that time. I couldn't, because when you're still in the what they call the transition mode, like when you're still earthbound but not on the other side yet. You don't have the ability to see the other side yet, or beings on the other side. So I felt my body being pulled through the ceiling, through the roof. I could. It was almost like being pulled backward by an invisible rubber band, and I could see my whole old hometown, the place I went skiing at, and I could, if I thought about it, I want to like, where's my house? And all of a sudden, my vision would zoom in to whatever I was trying to see, and it was so like right in my face and so clear in a way that no vision had ever been. And I realized that it didn't matter what direction things were in, that the vision that I could see was 360 degrees. I could see up, down, left, right, behind me, in front of me, didn't matter. And like I didn't have to turn my head to see something. My vision would just, mental vision would just go to that, whatever I was trying to see. And once it pulled past a certain point, everything went black for, I don't know, half a second. And next thing I knew, I was opening my eyes, but not really, just waking up on this other plane of existence. And I was in what looked like a room made out of energy. And it was like this bluish green color. It was very translucent. It was malleable. You could try to push against it and you could feel it kind of give under your hand, um, but not past a certain point, just like it wouldn't let you physically touch it. It was just there. And what I was told later is that everything on the other side is made of what they call potential energy. And so everything exists in that state normally until it's needed for a specific purpose, like a room to acclimate to the other side, or a life review pod, or place you want to be in, whatever being needs or wants, the energy will automatically create. It exists to do our bidding basically. And when it's not being used, it reverts to its potential state, waiting for its next use. Um, so anyway, I was in this room and laying on what felt like a bed, but the most comfortable bed I've ever been on. And I was surrounded by a very tall being on one side, two others on the other side. The two on my left looked like they were human, like they had a human guise to them. And I found out later what on the other side you have the ability to have what's called a residual self-image, which is kind of how you looked in your previous lifetime or any previous lifetime that you choose. And like my guide, for instance, likes the look that he had in his previous life, and so he always appears like that. At least to me, he did. And I realized very quickly that my guide was definitely not human. He was being about 9 feet tall, had dark bluish gray skin, uh, no hair. It was like a mix of the beings from that movie Avatar, if you've ever seen that, and a couple other things, but very tall, very um, athletic looking being, and it had a very translucent area in the chest area that was looked almost gelatinous and had a white light in the middle of it that was like it looked like a soft white light bulb, if you can imagine what that looks like. And I realized it was the being, the actual being inside of this guise that I was seeing, that being in its energy form inside of it. And uh, he explained that this was what he appeared like in his previous lifetime, the last time that he was incarnated. And found out later he had been my guide for all three of my last Earth-based lifetimes plus this one. So this is my fourth lifetime on Earth. Before that, I had incarnated on multiple other planets, at least in our galaxy, and plus other places before that. I only know about three of them. Um, but anyway, so once I got acclimated and uh, he explained where I was, what was going on, and I felt like I was comfortable. He said there's an experience you need to have. It's called the life review, and he he gave me a basic visual in my head because the whole time nobody's mouths were moving. I heard the voices in my head, and he was able to pick up on whatever I was thinking and answer it immediately. It was like a back and forth conversation, but it was happening all at the same time, but it wasn't confusing, if that makes sense. Um, it wasn't like for our verbal communication where you have to wait for someone to stop and then jump in. And if multiple people are talking, it's confusing and you can't make out one conversation. With telepathic, it's very clear. You can focus on one being or another, pick out whatever, and you can hear all of every conversation around you at the same time, and you're able to understand all of it at the same time without having to concentrate or expend any energy. He explained that he kind of showed me this experience was something that all beings go through when they have a near death experience, and also after you cross over after you die for the last time. And it it shows not only what you said, did, and experienced during your lifetime, it can show you what all of your words and actions, the effects, like how other people were affected by what you said and did. Like if you hurt somebody, you would feel it from their perspective. If you did something good for someone, you would feel that. So everything good, bad, or indifferent, it didn't matter. There was no judgment. It wasn't like some people think uh, that God judges us, and there's no judgment on the other side. It's all about pure, unconditional love. It's just to show you what you said and did on a purely factual basis, not saying, well, this is bad, that's good, you know, do this, don't do that. There was none of that stuff. It was just showing you this is your life, basically. And uh, so during mine, I didn't see very much because I hadn't lived that long at that point. And the one thing I did see that stuck out was when I was five, one of my older cousin by a year, I used to play at his house a lot when we were kids, and he had this Matchbox car, which was really popular back in the 70s and 80s, and it was ventilated. It was a recreation, or it looked exactly like the car his father owned, which was like a 70s model Pontiac Firebird, and he cherished this car like because for him it was like having his dad with him even when his dad wasn't around. And I just saw this as a cool car. Oh, I'm gonna take it home. Being a kid, just I see something cool, I want it. Let's take it home. And what I didn't see was how that affected him. Like he was crying for days on end. Mom, where's my car? I can't find my car, and unconsolable, or inconsolable, and just completely despondent. And I never knew that he had been like that after I'd taken his car. And I remember like when I first came back from the coma and was back to being at home and going back to school, the first thing I wanted to do was go find that car and bring it back to him. And he was so grateful, like there was no blame at all. He hugged me and he cried and oh, thank you so much. I've been looking all over for this car, and I felt so good giving it back to him that it overwhelmed that sad feeling that I felt on the other side from him not having it. And it made me realize like our actions have consequences even when they don't apply to us. Everything we do affects us, but it also affects everyone we encounter, our family, our friends, people on the street. Every little thing that you do affects people. And most of the time, you don't see that. Um, in fact, the one thing I always want to make sure I tell people, it's not just seeing what you did and said during your life. You get to see the down the line consequences, good or bad, of the things you did. Like, for instance, just as a real quick example, let's say you see someone at a grocery store who you obviously know is short and can't buy what they need grocery wise, and you decide spur of the moment, okay, I've got some extra money this month. I'm going to throw $100 and let her get what she wants. But that for you, that might be the end of the story. But for what you don't see behind the scenes is maybe that that month she had to decide between buying the groceries she needed or paying her rent. Well, now she doesn't have to make that choice anymore. She can just pay her rent because you got the groceries for her. Her kids now have a place to stay that's safe. They can study and not have to worry about being in a homeless shelter. So maybe they get better grades. Maybe that gets them into college. Maybe that they become a doctor. Maybe that doctor helps other people who are sick who wouldn't have been helped if they hadn't become that doctor. So there's all these down the line effects of just even one small thing that you do that nobody sees until you have a life review. And I think if everybody could see what the effects are of even the smallest things that we do to each other, that we would change everything about how we behave, how we act, how we treat each other. It changed my whole perspective on other people, on the world, on my place in it after I came back. And it's still affecting me now, 40 years after my second near death experience. But after this short life review, I immediately, my guy told me basically you can look around, explore, do whatever you want to do. We encourage you to be curious. If you have questions, you can always ask. We can tell you the answers from wherever you are. And I found that simply shifting my focus, I could move instantly to anywhere I wanted to be. Like if I wanted to be in my house, I could instantly, it was no moving from place to place, no walking, no uh, form of transportation. You were here, then you were there in that instant. And it didn't matter the distance. It could be the next room or the next galaxy, and it's the same on the other side. There's no transition time, no effort to get there. And um, I found myself in this place that I call my little pocket universe, which I didn't realize until much later in my second near-death experience was an idealized recreation of where my first Earth-based lifetime was, which was in Switzerland, the Zermatt region, for anybody who's familiar with that country, in southwest Switzerland. And I lived there during the very late 1690s and the first three quarters of the 1700s. And so I woke up in this place where I was on the side of a mountain. There was a cabin in front of me. I was surrounded by wildflowers of every color imaginable. Um, in the distance in front of me, I could see the mountain that I found out later was the Matterhorn. I remember I drew it when I came back because I had never seen any of this in this life, and I just kept drawing this mountain because it was like for me my obsession. Like if you ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the way that Richard Dreyfuss kept building the Devil's Tower out of everything he could come up with, it was like that for me. I just kept drawing it over and over again. It was my grandmother who saw it, recognized the slanted tip on the top of it, went and found a picture in an encyclopedia that she had and showed it to me, and I realized immediately that's what I was seeing. And now I had no concept of other countries at that point. I didn't start first grade until that fall. This has happened in the summer, before I went into first grade, so I had no concept of geography, other countries, let alone this specific one. So I had never seen any of the stuff that I saw during during that near death experience. I had never seen Switzerland, nothing, none of that. So that for me was very mind blowing, to put it mildly. Um, but after I was in this region, I remember looking up at the night sky, and because one thing you can do is you can control everything about wherever you're at. You can make it do whatever you like. If you want to stop the sun in the sky, you can do that. For me, the sun was my like how I experienced the being some call God, I call source, because it's a source of all love, a source of everything in the universe. Um, and so I call it source. And so for me, that being took on this like a giant sun. It was bigger than it appears in the sky. Rays are going all, you can see the individual rays going in all directions, touching everything, everywhere. Um, and it was like whatever it touched was full of love. And I mean, from the smallest flower to the biggest galaxy.
You're listening to the Inspire Me with Jay podcast. Please do like and subscribe to the channel, bringing hope and inspiration to the world.
Everything was touched by this. And it was the first time I truly conceived of what love was, like true love, not like romantic love, not oh hey I love you, see you, bye bye, not the kind of love that we experience as humans, but the pure unconditional love that we as beings experience on the other side, because that is the basis for everything. The being that we call God or source, whatever you choose to call that being, is pure unconditional love. And so everything that it created is imbued with a bit of that love. And it doesn't matter from the smallest cell to the biggest galaxy, all of it is created. Because love is a creational energy. Think about even in our human guise, and we're a very limited species, just love between two of us can create a whole nother life. Baby that grows up and becomes a human being. So even in our limited capacity, love can create. And when we love something, we can paint it or draw it or take a picture of it. And so we pour the love that's inside of us into what we're creating. And so if we can do that, even in our limited guise, imagine what a being who has no limits can do with it. And it has not only no limits to itself, but in a realm where there are no limits. So, um, but anyway, after I was in this place for a while, I remember looking at the night sky and seeing the stars up there, and I remember thinking, I wish I could be out there with where they are. And the next thing I knew, I was above. Like if you see the background behind me, that was basically where I was. I'd gone from being in Switzerland to being above Europe and that part of Earth. It was right. The Terminator was right about where that where the back of my head is. It was going from daylight into night, and I remember I could see all the lights coming on in the dark places and the sun setting behind the turning Earth, and it was the first time I'd seen the Earth from a perspective where there was no borders, there was no political lines, there was nothing separating anything. It was just one big blue, white, and brown and green planet glowing in the darkness. And it's like I felt this immediate protective instinct. Like I want to protect this place. I want to, um, like, this is our home. This is where we belong, and I need to protect it. And I started to explore. I didn't go very far that at that time because um, I didn't have a whole lot of experiences. I knew about a couple of other planets, but I didn't know very much about the universe beyond my hometown. And so I explored some of our solar system during that one. And I remember I was all the way out by Pluto, and I remember seeing it in a way because at the time the only picture we had of a Pluto was this white and brown blob that was very unfocused from a ground-based telescope. And for me, it was this vividly clear um, image that was so detailed that I was like, I didn't even know it was Pluto at first. I was in awe of how beautiful it was. And I remember seeing this feature that when the New Horizons, I think it's New Horizons, yeah, the New Horizons probe went by Pluto and took all those photos of it a few years ago. There is this beautiful white heart-shaped feature on one side of Pluto that we never saw until that probe went by and took pictures of it. I saw that in 1978 and sat in the middle of it. If you can, like imagine sitting on another planet and just looking out at the stars, like it was amazing to me. I couldn't even conceive of it. And while I was there, I immediately heard another voice in my head, and I recognized it as my grandmother. And all she was thinking is, "I hope he's okay. I hope he doesn't die." And that bond between us, even from as far away as I was at that time, immediately drew me back where I was on Pluto. Then I was next to her in the hallway in the hospital, looking through the little wire window that the doors had in the hospital, and I could see the Code Blue team working on my body, trying to revive me. And I heard my guide's voice again, and he said, "It's time for you to go back." And my first thought was, "Do I have to? Like, can I stay here? It's so beautiful and wonderful here. There's no pain here. Can I stay?" And he said, "No. There's things you need to do, and there there's a lot of people you need to help. And if you aren't here, they don't get helped. And so there are things you need to do. You need to stay." And as soon as he said, "You need to stay," I immediately was back in my body. And I remember when I first got revived, I couldn't focus on anything. All I felt was like a big mass of pain, light, sound, everything hurt. People were speaking to me, but I couldn't make out the sounds. It was like I compare it to Charlie Brown's teacher from the old cartoons, like wah 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 wah. Like I couldn't understand words because I had grown so used to telepathic communication that our limited verbal communication didn't make sense to me at first. And I just remember like I closed my eyes and was trying to like shut out everything because it was too painful to process. And it was like I was getting bombarded with all this at the same time. And I had gone from this being who felt like it had no limits, was so expansive that it could fill a universe, being crammed into this little tiny body. It felt like this metal box full of cattle prods. And it was like the most, I can't even conceive of like how going from that huge being to this little tiny box is so jarring that, that's why so many people have such a hard time coming back from near death experiences, and why depression is so common among NDEers, because you go from this place where everything is perfect and amazing. There's no pain, there's no suffering. You can do anything that you can imagine, and all of a sudden you're back in this place of pain and pain. Like light is pain, sound is pain. You're limited and you can't move, and you have to think about doing everything all of a sudden. And then it takes a while to adjust. Like it took me, I want to say, about 3 months to fully get back to being the new version of normal for me. Like I was able to finally go back to school. I was able to function somewhat normally, but I was completely changed even from that first experience, which was very limited.